Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Anti-ICE activists reach a new low. I mean, this is beyond. They've decided now, because there's been absolutely no crackdown by local police, that they can get away with storming churches and disrupting Sunday worship. It happened yesterday, and the city's Democratic leaders, as of noon Eastern today, nearly 24 hours later, have said nothing. Mr. Get the fuck out of Minneapolis tough guy, Mayor Fry, so quick to tell ICE to get out. Nothing. Nothing. He said not a word, which clearly means he's fine with it. So is Governor Walsh. They're fine seeing Christians, including children, harassed literally in the pews at Sunday Mass by these cretins who call themselves activists, who mean to harass any law-abiding Minnesotan, especially those in worship, because all these people worship is the God of wokeness, the God of leftism. That's their God. I mean, that's part of the problem here. We've talked about how uniformly they're unattractive. They tend to be fat, unkempt. You can tell they smell bad. And the other piece of it is they're godless. So they think nothing of going into a mass and disrupting people's private time with Jesus. That's fine by them. They don't care what the people are going through. And because they never go to church, you see, they don't realize that when you go to mass, you can become emotional. It brings up a lot for a lot of people. It's often the closest you feel to God and Jesus in your entire week. Some people are there praying over lost loved ones. Some people are tearful. Some people are really struggling in their personal lives. And this is the closest they can feel towards salvation, towards something larger than themselves. But these leftists don't understand that language, you see. They don't understand those sentiments. So they're fine harassing these people, whether they're hurting or not, including children who look scared in the pews. Aided and abetted, of course, by Don Lemon. Don Lemon, who reveled in it and lectured half of the parishioners about how they really had an obligation to sit there and fucking take it. That this was American as apple pie. Sit there and fucking take it. That was Don Lemon's basic message to these parishioners. He's a disgusting fool. Now, there's a question about whether he's also a criminal. That's kind of irrelevant to me. I mean, if he broke the law, I'm fine seeing him prosecuted. But I actually think what's more important is how disgusting he is. He's wearing a cap that reads like lemon head or whatever, his little lemon, like self-promotional, and satanic. That's how that felt. Self-promotional and satanic. Can you imagine? Think about it. Just think about it. I know most of you guys are not reporters, but you are individuals in America who live your lives, and probably a large portion of you go to church or services. Can you imagine walking into somebody else's worship and disrupting it? And then you, as a so-called journalist, starting to lecture them about how they needed to take it, about how it was important and it was quintessentially American and totally allowed under the First Amendment. This guy's fall from what was once the pinnacle of cable news, I'm not saying much, has been so precipitous and stunning. I mean, not to some of us who saw what a disgusting person he was a long time ago, but wow, this is like, okay. No one should ever look at this guy again. Okay, nobody should ever be watching his disgusting feed. His disgusting behavior dovetails perfectly with who he is as a so-called journalist and as a man. It happened at the city's church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Protesters say they took aim at that church because one of the church's pastors is allegedly involved in ICE operations. We actually don't know whether that's true or not. We were unable to confirm that. But they could have gone to that church and requested a meeting with that pastor to talk about their differences. Not that they had any right to do that. They had absolutely no fucking right to talk to anybody. They didn't. But they didn't even try. They did not even attempt to have a discussion with him outside of Sunday service because the whole point was to upset Christians. I'm sorry, I'm getting sick of this shit. Okay? I'm sick of this. Like, it was 3 weeks ago, we had Mark Levin calling Jack Posobiec a crackpot with his picture holding the rosary. Now we've got open season on Christians while they're in celebrating Jesus at their Sunday worship. What the F? Something's happening here, and it's satanic. They decided to interrupt Sunday worship to deliver their message of, quote, justice for Renee Good. And for good measure, this is just perfect. For good measure, chants of hands up, don't shoot, which is based on a lie about the 2014 police-involved shooting of Michael Brown. Here's what's so crazy. Sonny Hostin of The View, amongst other idiot leftists, I actually think Margaret Hoover was involved in it too, who's not a leftist but behaved like a moron in this clip, did the hands up, don't shoot on the set of CNN in the wake of the shooting of Michael Brown. Michael Brown is the reason Michael Brown got shot by the officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Michael Brown attacked the officer, as several witnesses, including 5 black witnesses, ultimately told Eric Holder's DOJ. That's why he was shot by the officer, as he then once again lurched forward toward the officer. That's what happened. Leftist liars got a lie started that he died saying, with his hands up, saying, don't shoot. It was not true. It's been completely debunked. It's been acknowledged as a lie by multiple leftists who write in papers like the New York Times and the Washington Post. And yet these idiots in St. Paul, Minnesota, refuse to take the truth when it's handed to them. Even by black witnesses, even by black commentators, even by a black attorney general. They don't give a shit. They're agenda driven, okay? Now, here is the moment the protest began, and a look at how the protesters hounded the parishioners.
Renee Good! Renee Good! Renee Good! Hands up! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you?
This is the pastor
You drink
telling
your
them to
coffee,
get out.
you
and
got
a
your
leftist.
jewelry, you have your nice clothes.
This is a
but what do
leftist
you do?
harassing the
What do you
parishioners.
do to stand for your Somali and Latino communities? I'm not going to comment.
Parishioners being totally respectful. The leftists marching up and down the aisle. Fists raised. In that montage we just played, you can hear the pastor who was leading the service say, shame on you, and point to the protesters to exit. That's it. You don't leave after that. It's called trespass. It's called criminal trespass. Parishioners engaged the protesters, begging them to leave, but they did not. By the way, they were so respectful that that asshole, that complete asshole, we'll get to him, his last name is Kelly, who seemed to lead the whole thing, was in the face of these parishioners. Why aren't you standing with your Somali neighbors like they're all a bunch of racists because they don't want to support the fraudsters who have invaded Minneapolis? And the parishioners, I mean, I don't know what I would do. I really think I would have to go jihad on these people. But these parishioners are so kind and sweet. They really are Minneapolis nice. They're like, I have no comment. Please don't. Please leave. You watch this online and it's almost aggravating because you want these complete cretins. What you really want is for them to be punched in their face. That's really what I want. I want Jesse Kelly in that church. That's what I want. But instead they got Minnesota nice. And we got begging for these people to leave, which is totally appropriate too, but they did not. They stayed for another 45 minutes. According to Alpha News, which we love, they did not leave until actually the police showed up. Oh, great. We finally did have police show up. On the live feed, because BLM was live feeding this, one protester could be heard saying, this isn't God's house. This is the house of the devil. Well, you made it. You made it the house of the devil. You brought the devil inside. I could see it. Didn't I say satanic right at the top? That's how it felt. At one point, the church began blasting music, you heard it at the end of that clip there, to try to drown out the protesters. You know, much in the way we now hear the good guys chant USA, USA, when we hear people try to drown out Trump or one of his nominees at their confirmation hearings. Well, that was actually a good move. They tried to blast Christian music to try to drown out the absurd calls of these so-called protesters, these terrorists. And just seconds into the protest, I'm using that word very facetiously. This was not a protest. This is terror. This is terrorism. You can see one small child upset in a pew and being comforted by his dad. This is so sad. Imagine your little boy not knowing what to make of this, not knowing where it was going. Every child in America, unfortunately, knows that strangers sometimes come in to places where children are to shoot them. And now they see these bullies show up in a Baptist mass and threaten the people sitting there, try to shame and scream in the faces of them. A woman sitting next to the boy, likely his mom, can be seen putting her hand on his shoulder to comfort him. She looks bewildered. She's probably unsure whether these protesters are just there to yell or to do something more sinister. We just had a shooting inside of a church a couple of months ago. We've had multiple shootings inside of synagogues. So these people have to worry about whether they are just going to be allowed to worship or whether they're going to get hurt and their children are going to get hurt. You can't be sure, can you? Sadly, in this day and age. Don Lemon, who was totally enjoying his moment in the spotlight, also catching footage of an upset parishioner trying to get the protesters to leave. But in true Don Lemon fashion, he justified the protesters' actions.
Sure, people here don't like it, but protests are not comfortable. And there are people here who are, I'm looking at a young man who's in the corner. He's frightened. He's scared. He's crying. People are leaving church. So, yeah. The guy's standing up now saying, get out of our church. He's screaming. They're trying to calm him down.
God bless him. What you can see is a parishioner yelling at the rioters, at the terrorists, get out. Get out. He's screaming at them, get out. And you've got Don Lemon's running commentary that protests are not comfortable. Guess what, Don? You're too stupid to understand the law, but this one also happens to be illegal. You know how it's illegal to harass people as you show up at the abortion clinic? You're not allowed to do that. The law makes it clear you cannot show up right outside of the abortion clinic and harass people or any medical clinic. Well, guess what? That same law also applies to places of worship. You're not allowed to do it. There are some very limited, but this is one of them, limits on your First Amendment rights. The Supreme Court has made clear over and over and over and over and over that you can have restrictions on speech that govern time, place, and manner. And that's what this so-called FACE Act is. It's a restriction on time, place, and manner for protests around things like abortion clinics and around things like churches. And you certainly do not have the right to go into a place of worship and harass worshiping parishioners, something you, Don Lemon, and all of your disgusting BLM terrorists are about to learn the hard way. During the protests, Lemon talked to the pastor who was leading the service and had the gall to ask him, don't you think Jesus would understand?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Oh my God, he's not.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're here. Okay. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I need to take a deep breath. This is so infuriating. Some people are too stupid to be allowed into the news. And that's saying something. Some people are too dumb to be allowed to do the news. He's too dumb. He's too dumb. He's too ideological. He's too sympathetic to the terrorists there. and doesn't know shit about the law or the U.S. Constitution. Has no fucking clue what he is saying to that pastor there. That they have a First Amendment right to be there. You're going to learn the hard way, sir, how wrong you are. Lemon was also outside the church when some of the parishioners left and admitted it must have been traumatic for them. But he says, hey, that's what protesting's all about. Making children scared. Such a sweet guy, Don. Watch.
Watch this guy here. Look, he's hugging his kid. And, you know, I imagine it's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here. But again, careful. It's very slippery right here. Yeah. It's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here. But that's what really, careful, please. Really slippery. Not kidding. That's what protesting is about. And so
it's about traumatizing people. Literally, you heard it there. It's traumatic for people, but that's what protesting is all about. It's about traumatizing them. Men, women, children, Christians. It's fine. Let's get the Christians. I'm telling you, this is a growing attitude in this country, and it has to stop. The whole protest was organized by Nekima Levy Armstrong. She's a longtime BLM activist. She's a lawyer and an idiot and a former law professor at the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis. Okay, never heard of it. She says she's a reverend. Sure. Where? Where do they allow this kind of behavior? Reverend. Per Alpha News, Armstrong said after the protest, quote, I feel that we did what needed to be done. And I know that this church will never be the same after today. You're right. I hope you get to say that to all of your fellow inmates. I really do. I hope you get to, I hope you're the one who they decide to room with the tranny roommate. I do. I really hope that when you actually go to pay for your crimes, you get introduced to your side's demands that, you know, we be open and welcoming to everybody. And you get the 6'5" huge fucking tranny posing as a woman as your roommate. You know, the one, this just hit the news. I think it was out of California, where the guy who continued to sexually assault women and force them to perform fellatio on him over and over got roomed next to a female or with a female in his cell. Why? Because of leftists like you, madam, who think that there's no such thing as a woman and that we can erase these lines. How's that going to go? I'm sorry. Like, I'm so angry right now. I just feel like, what? Something better be done. Pam Bondi's saying it will. Trump is saying it will. We'll see. Attorney General Pam Bondi writing on X, quote, the Justice Department is investigating at my direction. Any violation of federal law will be prosecuted. Harmeet Dillon, the assistant AG for the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, writing on X, a house of worship is not a public forum for your protest. It's a space protected from exactly such acts by federal criminal and civil laws. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt weighing in, writing, quote, President Trump will not tolerate the intimidation and harassment of Christians in their sacred places of worship. All of which better be true. I have every reason to believe them. I think they're as angry as I am, and I look forward to seeing what they do with those feelings. We check the X feeds again of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Minnesota Mayor Jacob Frey, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. So far, zero reaction to this protest. She's probably in the middle of her 5 times a day prayer. She's probably too busy yelling Allahu Akbar and patting her husband's bank account. She can't spare a minute for the Christians who are suffering as a result of the Somali, her people, fraud at the center of all of this. I'm sure at some point today they're going to give their thoughts and prayers, but whenever it comes, it's too late. It won't be sincere because it doesn't take hours to condemn protests. Again, terrorism inside a church that left children frightened. And if you think all the protesters, again, I'm using that term very loosely, were just chanting generic woke mantras, you're wrong. One, I mentioned a moment ago, is named Megyn Kelly. According to Right Angle News Network, he's a paid agitator who travels from state to state harassing ICE agents. Why is he out on the street is the real question, because you see, he was arrested on Friday for reportedly impeding ICE, but was out thanks to the revolving door that is the criminal justice system in places like Minneapolis, in time for Sunday's, quote, protest. And we mean terrorism. He got up in the faces of the worshipers, screaming, ranting and raving about, quote, white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives. For the listening audience, he's white. Watch.
As you can see, all these pretend Christians, all these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity?
In the face
You're
of two young
sinners.
men here.
You're pretending to be Christians, but we know you live an easy life, don't you? Living real comfortable while children are dragged into
Now
concentration camps. You're all living real comfortable,
Screaming at kids
aren't
in a
you?
van.
Shame on you. Do something. Stand
A
with
girl
the
in an American
Somalis.
flag sweater
Stand with the
slams the door.
Latinos.
Get away
Quit
from her.
ignoring this injustice.
Okay. The Daily Wire's Megan Basham reports this guy's been previously linked to a group disrupting church services in Washington, D.C., including one incident where the protesters caused a church parishioner to go to the hospital with a shattered eardrum after the person screamed into a bullhorn in their face. On TikTok, Kelly has called ICE agents Nazis. He has said the U.S. is an evil empire and that a civil war has already begun. And on one of his Sunday protest videos, he wrote, quote, "No rest for demons." In that, Mr. Kelly, you and I are in perfect agreement. Who the demons are, we're going to have to fight out. Joining me now, Michael Knowles. He's host of the Michael Knowles Show on the Daily Wire. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Let's be honest, America can still be a dangerous place, and you cannot afford to wait for help when you need it. Sure, you could use a firearm, but in today's America, defending yourself with deadly force could have legal consequences. According to FBI data, 99.9% of all altercations do not require lethal force. And that's exactly why so many are turning to Byrna. Byrna is proudly American, hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. These less lethal self-defense launchers are trusted by hundreds of government agencies, law enforcement departments, and private security companies. Over 600,000 Byrna pistols have been sold, mostly to private citizens who refuse to be victims. Byrna launchers fire rock-hard kinetic rounds and powerful tear gas and pepper projectiles capable of stopping a threat from up to 60 feet away. No background checks, no waiting periods, and Byrna can ship straight to your door. Take responsibility. Protect your future. Visit Byrna.com right now or your local Sportsman's Warehouse. That's BYRNA.com or your local Sportsman's Warehouse. Visit now and be prepared to defend. Michael, welcome back. This is so infuriating. Like, it's actually making my blood boil. I want everyone in jail. I want all of them arrested. I just think that this is the line beyond which we cannot allow them to cross. I don't care if it takes the National Guard, if it takes all of Pam Bondi's DOJ, if it takes President Trump personally making a visit to this church. I don't care what has to be done, but this is the red line and they've crossed it.
Yes, of course, Megyn. My thought during your excellent monologue was, Megyn, how do you really feel? Will you please tell us how you really feel here? And of course, you use this word terrorism. That's not hyperbole. Terrorism has a definition. There are all sorts of violence. There's state violence. There's war. There's just war. There's law enforcement. There are crimes of passion. There are all different kinds of violence. Terrorism has a specific definition. It's when you target civilians with violence to achieve political ends. That is exactly what happened here. When Don Lemon goes out and he presents himself as if he's just a journalist covering this. Now it seems, though, he actually was working with the agitators. When he says that protest is about traumatizing people, that just isn't true. I'm sure he's not familiar with the Constitution or the meaning of most words, but protesting is for peaceably assembling to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's where the supposed right to protest comes from in the Constitution. When you traumatize kids at church to achieve a political end, that is a form of terrorism. And to your point, Megyn, it violates federal law because there's this law, which is frankly preposterous, which says that Christians and people who want to, just generally people who want to defend innocent human life are limited when they advocate outside of abortion clinics. The FACE Act was passed, and the only way they were able to ram it through is to say, look, we'll stop demonstrations at abortion clinics, but we'll also stop demonstrations at churches. So you've got the churches.
That's exactly right.
The church of the right is just church, and the church of the left is the abortion clinic. And I'm even thinking of the line
Exactly
of
right.
Peter Kraft, a brilliant observation, which is that, abortion is the sacrament of the left. It even uses the centerpiece of the Christian liturgy, the Holy Communion, when the priest says, "This is my body," he's quoting Christ, "This is my body, which will be given up for you." And the left takes it and inverts it to satanic purposes, says, "This is my body," and they use it to sacrifice a little baby. So the FACE Act is supposed to protect both. It's only ever really used to protect the abortion clinics. Well, here, yes, obviously the federal government has to get involved. The one part I disagree with, though, in your monologue, Megyn, is when you say these people are busting in. This is, for some people, the one time of the week when they feel closest to Christ, and they're praying and they're worshiping, and this gives them some comfort. And, the left, they don't know that. I think the left does know that. I think actually you see throughout history, they always target the churches. They target the churches in the French Revolution, in the Bolshevik Revolution, in the Spanish Civil War, in Mexico. They do it for a purpose. I'm reminded there was this clip going viral of a BBC presenter. She was interviewing a young man, said, "Who are your heroes?" He said, "Kendrick Lamar, and my biggest hero is Jesus." She audibly hisses. This is something out of the New Testament, like there's a demon there or something. This is really spooky stuff. And you see this nasty spirit animating leftist agitators throughout history.
Yes, I honestly, I've never felt so aware of demonic forces around us. I truly haven't. Started with Charlie Kirk's assassination, Michael, and I have just felt like they're everywhere ever since. Something has been unleashed that feels truly unholy. We have never needed St. Michael more than right now. And to cross into somebody's place of worship, I do wonder, it'll be very interesting to see how the mainstream covers this today, because I guarantee if you had a bunch of white MAGA types invading a mosque, this would be everywhere. And I wonder, how would it be covered if you had a bunch of people invading a synagogue in today's day and age and getting in the face of Jewish worshipers? Will there be any understanding or empathy for Christians who are in there worshiping on a Sunday at a Baptist service? Here's how Don Lemon saw it moments before he joined the resistance organization to go into that church. This is him outside of the church at the initial meeting. Seems pretty clear he knew exactly what they were about to do in SOT 6.
Well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? Saw the American flag or whatever, but these are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up. Again, this is an operation that is secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold here on the Don Lemon Show. There are for this reason, it may look like MAGA coded, but there's a reason they have so many white people here. I'm just going to be honest. It's because of the operation that they're doing today. It's important to have allies, as they said, white allies here.
This is unbelievable. The flag and the white people make it, quote, MAGA coded. They had to have whites. He wants to excuse the presence of whites to his audience with his stupid DL Mike flag, Don Lemon Mike flag. Okay, Don. He's really missing his CNN days when he mattered. He has to excuse the presence of white people there because you see, they're going, he's about to do the big reveal. They're going into a Baptist church service. And so you see, you need some whites. Hello, lots of black people are Baptist too. You'd think you'd know that, but no. And you need the white allies there, you see, because you're going to go confront a bunch of white Baptists in Minneapolis. As he makes very clear, he knows what's about to happen, Michael. And truly, after that pastor said, get out, every single one of them was guilty of trespass, including Don Lemon.
Of course, he makes a number of uncomfortable admissions right now, which he should get blowback for in the media, but also he's probably going to have blowback from prosecutors on. He's admitting that he's in on it. He's clearly one of the organizers of this. But even the worst admission, I think, is when he comes out and he says, yeah, and it's MAGA coded. I mean, they've got American flags or whatever. As if to say, our political movement, the left-wing political movement, is anti-America. He says, yeah, there's some white people, like, I'm sorry about that, but we have to do it. It's MAGA coded. As if to say our political movement, the left-wing political movement, is anti-white people. It's anti-white,
right,
it's
everybody
anti-American,
knows that.
It's anti-Christian. Obviously, it is. And so, when you ask how will this be covered, by the establishment outlets, they'll try to downplay it entirely. If this were a mosque, this would be treated as the worst, most egregious form of terrorism ever in the history of the world, because the left uniformly seems to worship Muslims, not because they agree with Islam, but because they all have a common enemy, which is the country and Christianity. If it were a synagogue, it would probably be 50-50, because some of the left is pro-Jews, a lot of the left is anti-Jews. You would have mixed coverage of it. The one thing the left is certainly in agreement on, though, is it's anti-Christian. And so they go in there. Don Lemon is obviously helping to organize this thing. He says, I have a little secret, but I'm not going to let you in on it right now. And then he gets up in the face of that pastor and just...
Let me, wait, hold that thought. I want to give you the exact quote. He's in the car before the shot we showed. He says, quote, "We don't know what's happening. We kind of do. But we don't know how it's going to play out, right?" And he mentioned the word church accidentally before they arrived. He was obviously trying to hide where they were going on the way over during the live stream, but he knew full well what they were about to do. Keep going.
These are the secret plans that Don, is letting slip a little bit. The very fact that he has the secret, tells you he's complicit. And then he goes up in the face.
Not exactly a Navy SEAL, is he?
No, I would not send him into Venezuela. Okay, that guy is not clandestine. No. But he goes up to that pastor and he starts mocking him. And this is what the leftist radicals have been doing to Christians going back at least to the French Revolution. Frankly, this is what opponents of Christianity have been doing going back to ancient Rome, is they mock the Christians. And so he says, well, I thought you were a Christian. Why aren't you just talking to these people who obviously have no right to just interrupt a worship service? But he says, why don't you just talk to them? You can hear them shrieking and screaming in the background. Good on the pastor for saying, I don't think they want to talk. I don't think anyone's interested in talking here. And this obviously is not the time or place for that. Then Don Lemon, it actually cut out, but a little bit later in that clip, Don Lemon says, well, look, I'm a Christian. Look, I'm a Christian. And you have to ask yourself, in what meaningful way is this man a Christian? We don't need to get into his personal life,
None.
but even just his public behavior here, it doesn't
I mean, his personal life is relevant to the following extent. He has no children. He's a gay man in a gay marriage with no children. And he has absolutely no empathy for the children sitting there. I mean, he really doesn't. He's like, too bad, trauma's all part of it. Suck it up. As mothers comforting their young sons is apparently so long ago in his history, if it ever happened between Don and his own mom, that he's forgotten that children actually do have a right to feel safe, especially in a place of worship, and might feel unsafe with Mr. Kelly, a serial agitator who's running around actually hurting people, bursts into his church and screams in his face in the face of his parents. Don doesn't seem to understand that at all.
By the way,
maybe
Megyn,
if he actually had a child, he might.
And don't forget the specific context here. It's not just that kids have been accustomed since Columbine to recognize that in schools, in churches, in public places, they could be shot up, they could be targeted. But specifically, there was...
Which just happened. Michael,
in Minnesota.
Yeah, were you just going to say it just happened? Yes, in Minneapolis.
Yes.
Like it just happened.
Yes, and
the nerve.
Specifically
the nerve.
Christian kids.
Yes, exactly. And absolutely no sympathy or empathy for them whatsoever. The law, there is the trespass law. And by the way, you as a journalist can violate it. If you go into a private place without permission, or even a public place where permission is then withdrawn, meaning you're told to leave and you don't, you absolutely can be prosecuted for trespass. But there is also this FACE Act that you point out was originally meant to target abortion clinic protests. And the quid pro quo from the right was, well, you also have to include churches, which is really just a fig leaf until now, until you have Trump and Bondi in there who are actually saying, you know what, we're going to enforce it. And it says, this act prohibits the use of threat of force and physical obstruction that either injures, intimidates, or interferes, or threatens to, attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person who is pursuing their exercising their First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. So so physical obstruction is enough. That is attempting to interfere with or intimidate any person at church. Got it? So it boils down to, have you by threat of force or by physical obstruction attempted to intimidate or interfere with somebody at worship. The answer is yes.
It's on camera.
It's yes to all of them.
Obviously. I mean,
it's on camera.
They're basically bragging about it. And so this is why the question of how will this be covered, I think has to lead us to the conclusion that it doesn't matter how it's covered. I don't care what the news networks say. I don't care what the New York Times writes or doesn't write about it. We are in the government right now, and the only way that you are going to discourage this is through a massive show of just force, of force that is very much in accordance with justice and with the law. But that's what's going to do it, okay? The law is a teacher, and so we need to round all these people up. Biden was able to round up every Midwestern granny who took a selfie in the Capitol Rotunda on January 6th.
Yes, including journalists.
Yes, exactly. And here, we need to round all of these people up who broke the law. That includes Don Lemon. We need to tell them no. In many ways, what's going on in Minneapolis right now is the consequence of the left encouraging people to violate the law and never holding them to account. So when that lady who ended up getting shot by the ICE officer because she ran her car into him, when she was shot, I felt sympathy for her because she didn't think there would be consequences to their actions. Look at Minneapolis after George Floyd. Look at the left rioting and disrespecting law enforcement and even attacking law enforcement for years now. Of course, she didn't expect consequences. That's a pity. We cannot give up law and order because of that. We need to remind people there will be consequences. This will not be tolerated. You will not be permitted to obstruct law enforcement. You will not be permitted to target Christians. You will not be permitted to scandalize little kids. I mean, that issue, frankly, takes us all the way to the transgender fights that we've been having in recent years. You have to make clear that there is order. What you mentioned, Charlie Kirk's assassination. After Charlie was assassinated, a lot of people, I think in some ways to cope and process our grief, we said, well, you know, you might have assassinated one of the great conservative leaders, but we'll only be stronger after this. And sometimes that's true. Unfortunately, usually it's not. The reason why people keep doing assassinations is because, by and large, assassinations work. That's a very hard truth. And frankly, Charlie's assassination did create a lot of turmoil and division on the right. That's what it was designed to do. That's what it did. The reason that the left goes into the churches is because they can intimidate Christians, and by and large, it actually does work. The reason why they obstruct law enforcement is they can stop law enforcement from carrying out the law. By and large, it does work. We have to prove to them that it does not work. This is not merely a matter of, appeasing our passions or even bringing about some retribution because these clips get our blood boiling. This is an existential matter for law and order in the United States. If we're going to allow roving leftist mobs to go in and traumatize, their word, not ours, traumatize little Christian kids while they pray to God, we might as well give up the constitutional order because it would be meaningless.
I know. Michael, I don't know about you. I'm ready to get on a plane and go to Minneapolis right now. I truly am. Like, if you and I and Matt Walsh, he's coming on in 20 minutes, have to sit outside of these churches all day on Sunday, then we'll do that. Then we will do that. But like, there are actually National Guardsmen who are better suited to do it. And I know Trump doesn't want to issue the Insurrection Act. His poll numbers are not going in the right direction on all of this. But this cannot be allowed. And what we can do, however, is we can show every single one of those faces. We zeroed in on this activist Kelly because he's an obvious cretin, a loudmouth and injurer. But there are multiple BLMers standing there. These are not all the white people. Some are black, standing there totally fine with traumatizing the children and the innocents in that mass. And just for listening audience, you see these people they're targeting to harass us, scream in their faces. It's like young Midwestern men who look maybe 18, 19 with like V-neck sweaters on with their little tie on underneath their V-neck sweater, just there with like a clean cut haircut, just there to worship on a Sunday. Like like you see this guy Kelly in his little vest screaming at them, why aren't you supporting your Somali neighbors? This like obnoxious, obviously crazy white guy with this crazy facial hair. And like these sweet, God-fearing Midwesterners, Michael, and you know who the good guys are. I just want to show you one more Don Lemon clip because here he is. This is so indicative of the press, right? This guy was like the face of CNN. So he gets in the face of one of these parishioners right outside. And this man, who's a little on the older side, very articulately defends what ICE is doing. And so in the news story that Don Lemon raises, and Don Lemon gets frustrated and basically writes the guy off as a know-nothing. But here's part of it in SOD 8.
On one side are people who watched a previous administration bring 12 million people in over the course of 4 years, and many of them undocumented, many of them criminals, etc. At the same time, these are what are called targeted interventions by ICE to keep the American people safe.
If I respectfully may interject here, I've been out reporting on a lot of these, and they're not targeted. There are no warrants signed by a judge, let me finish. And they're American citizens, many of them. Most of the people that they detain don't have criminal convictions or criminal records.
I'm not going to get into the weeds. This is
you should know that, though. Don't you think that's part of it?
One administration caused a great deal of chaos and havoc and danger for American citizens, and another is trying to correct that.
Do you believe that? Why honestly,
okay.
let me talk to you just on the facts.
You're not a journalist.
Yes, I am. I want to give you the facts.
No.
Did you know that undocumented people and immigrants commit far less crime than American citizens?
We're done.
How brilliant was that man? No, not taking his facts from Don Lemon, who tried to say the vast majority of people being arrested have no criminal record. You should know that. That's a lie. Kristi Noem put the number over 70% who have been arrested by ICE have an additional crime. That's the reason ICE was looking for them. And we've documented before that in the vast majority of those cases, it's a violent crime.
Of course. The idea that they commit crime at lower rates, or they don't use the welfare system, or that, they come up with all of these second and third order excuses. First of all, their premises are false. But even if that were true, which it's not, they have no right to be here. The federal government has not only the right, but the responsibility to remove these people from the country because of all of the downstream effects of this. Yes. And so, I pointed out the downside of left-wing violence, which is that it works. It does work. That's why they do it, because it can work. But the flip side of that is when we enforce the law, when we do what we're supposed to do, what the people elected Republicans to do, that has a downstream effect as well. You just look, if the heart of this is this immigration debate and the libs are so forceful over immigration because they think it'll give them a permanent electoral majority, if you just look at that debate from last year, the fact that Trump deported formally well over 500,000 people, and then through self-deportations could be well over 2 million people, depending on the labor statistics you're looking at or what have you. At the very least, you had a lot of people leaving and you had the border closed. You saw drug overdose deaths decline for most of last year. You saw rents decrease 4 months in a row, month over month. Why is it? You saw a lot of these downstream effects. Why? Because state action also has political consequences as well. So there's no substitute here. It's good that we feel righteous indignation. It's good. St. Thomas Aquinas, no less an authority than he, points out that if you don't feel anger at injustice, something's wrong with you. If you don't feel anger looking at these scenes, what this mob has done to this church congregation, there's something a little bit wrong with you. But that can't be the end of it. That will be fruitless. That will be worse than fruitless if we don't follow that up with real political action and arrest these people for the crimes that they're committing, put them in prison for as long as we possibly can, stifle the agitation that we're seeing throughout Minneapolis, and stop it from spreading to the rest of the country. If we do that long enough, we keep shipping out the criminals, we keep suppressing the criminals that we have in our own country, we reestablish norms and order. If we do that long enough, guess what? Before you know it, you're going to look up and you're going to have a normal country again. If we don't, if we abdicate our responsibility, this is coming to a church near you.
Absolutely. This needs to be met with the strong arm of the law. And I mean, the thing we're up against, of course, is what's going to happen when and if these people are arrested. Because I mentioned this guy, Megyn Kelly, who was arrested on Friday and was out in time to disrupt this Sunday service. This is him on camera on TikTok explaining the fact that he was arrested on Friday before this church protest. Take a listen. It's at 11.
Today I got arrested for being in a street. I wasn't impeding traffic. I was just scolding Nazis for their bad decisions. And they came up, they lined up, and then they sprinted after me. And they chased me for blocks. I was running for my life. I was scared. I don't know what they're going to do to me. They're fucking Nazis.
Sure you are.
A woman was filming me from her minivan, and I begged her to let me in because I was scared. So I jumped in the back of her minivan, and you know what they did? They came up and they put a gun to her face. They pulled a pistol on her and put a gun to her face. This is not America. This is not freedom.
He seems hinged.
Yeah, generally speaking, just like a rule of thumb in politics, when people are screaming at the top of their lungs in voices that seem about to proclaim, "My name is Legion, for we are many," those are not the guys you want to side with. Those guys have problems, and it is a mercy to arrest them. This is a point, by the way, because they're lovely, sweet people, including Christians and moderate conservatives, who say, well, look, don't we want to be nice, and we don't want to be, we don't need to arrest all of them, and maybe we should stop deporting the illegal aliens. We just want to be nice, nice, nice. The premise there is fundamentally flawed. And this goes back all the way, not just in the Christian tradition, but even back to good old philosophy in ancient Greece. The premise here is it's good to the bad guys if you let them off the hook. It's not good. It's really bad to the innocent people when you let the bad guys off the hook, because they can torch their cities and commit a lot of crimes. But it's bad for the bad guys too. Do you think this guy is flourishing? Do you think this guy, did he call in sick from work to go obstruct law enforcement and shriek in a church? Something tells me he's not the most gainfully employed guy in the world. He doesn't have his life together. Something's really wrong with him. We need to arrest him for the actual crimes he's committed and punish him for the crimes he's committed. But one of the benefits of our correctional system is we correct people. We can rehabilitate him. He's living a bad life, and it will be an act of mercy when Tom Homan or Kristi Noem or anybody else from law enforcement shows up at his home, maybe Stephen Miller, and drags him out and brings this guy a little bit back to sanity. Whatever he's doing right now is not good for him, and it's certainly not good for society.
Yeah, no, flourishing is a no. He's not flourishing. Agreed. And he won't be flourishing if he also gets put in the room with the tranny 6'5" guy. I mean, I don't think that guy cares who fillets him. I want to talk about Ilhan Omar, who's very upset. She's very upset, not about the fraud that the Somalis from her own home country are committing here in the United States, but about the ICE behavior and the investigations. Here she is at a hearing on Friday in Minneapolis, SOT 16.
It is appalling for our Republican colleagues to be okay, for there to be cell detentions in ICE for American citizens. It is appalling for them to be okay, for there to be checkpoints in American cities where people are asked for their papers. And it is appalling for Americans to have to carry their citizen papers only to be told they are not sure if those papers are correct. I don't want to curse, but those of us who escaped places like that, the one place where we thought we would never experience this is the U.S. goddamn States.
Haha, let me see your papers. And why'd you marry your brother?
Yeah, her papers are a little bit suspect.
America wants to know.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to see your paper. And she talked about papers, Michael. She's like your driver's license. Show me your and by the way, she talks about how they're just like stopping random people. No, ICE has a list of people they are looking for. And if Minneapolis and Minnesota would just cooperate with them in handing over, the vast majority of these people are already in the criminal justice system. They could have been nabbed at the police station, but they won't do that. So now ICE has got to track them down in their apartment buildings and make it sound like they're just at a random red light saying, like, show me your social security number and your birth certificate. That's bullshit.
I love the performative preface. She says, I don't want to curse. And you think, look, people use salty language. But if you have the presence of mind to say, I don't want to curse, and then you say this naughty word, you clearly want to. So first of all, she's a liar off the bat. But the funny thing about this Ilhan Omar clip is I actually agree with what she's saying. I don't agree with her conclusion. But she says, it's appalling that in America, we have to have people carry their papers and we don't know if their papers are real. Yeah, that is it is appalling that your party let tens of millions of foreign criminals into this country. I wish we didn't have to do that. I wish we had social solidarity and we didn't have tens of millions of foreign criminals but we are where we are. You got to play the hand you're dealt. We're trying to get them out. You don't want to get them out. But yeah, that's why we have to do this, is because of you. But then second of all, she says, and I come from this place and I got refuge from this bad country and now I'm here in this. What does she say? The word she uses calls America God-forsaken. Worse than that. It says that America is a damned country. And so she doesn't like the country. She thinks it's in a really bad spot and she thinks it's just as bad as the country she came from. Well, great. I guess we agree in that You don't want to be here, Ilhan Omar, because this is such a bad place. And I don't want you here, Ilhan Omar, because you make the country worse. So we have this rare moment of agreement, and we should just go our separate ways. You can go back to Star Wars land, and we can stay here in America, and we'll all be better for it.
Totally. No one will miss you. And I guess where you come from, you're allowed to marry your brother? I don't know. It was an odd thing for you to do. We all know why you did it. And now, as we reported earlier, she's under investigation for her husband's very bizarre $30 million income in a year. He went from something like low thousands in income to over 30 million. And now he's being investigated by the House Oversight Committee and others. So we'll see how that works out for her. Michael Knowles, as always with you, it was too short. I love having you on. Please come back soon.
Marvelous to be with you, Megyn. See you next time.
All right. And our pal Matt Walsh is on next. Let's be real. You're busy, chasing kids, running errands, maybe trying to squeeze in a workout here or there. And the last thing you want to do is pile the whole family in the car and waste a perfectly good Saturday in some big box store just to look at window treatments. Consider 3-Day Blinds, the leading manufacturer of high-quality custom window treatments in the U.S. Their local, professionally trained design consultants bring the showroom to you. They offer expert advice in your home and give a free, no-obligation quote the very same day. They handle every step: design, precise measuring. Who wants to do the precise measuring? This is an outsourceable thing. And professional installation. And their Instagram is full of gorgeous inspo pics. Right now, get quality window treatments that fit your budget with 3-Day Blinds. Head to 3dayblinds.com/MK for their buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery. For a free, no charge, no obligation consultation, just head to 3dayblinds.com/MK. That's buy one, get one 50% off when you head to the number 3 DAY blinds.com/MK. Now we're joined for more on the absolute insanity coming out of Minneapolis and across the country by Matt Walsh. He's host of the Matt Walsh Show on the Daily Wire, and he has a new and important series called Real History with Matt Walsh, which we will get to shortly, but he's trying to right the record on the bullshit that is being spun by leftists who hate America. And it's long overdue. Somebody took that on. But first, we're going to stick with Minneapolis. Matt, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, a little bit of a delay, but we'll manage it. We left off with Michael Knowles a bit on Don Lemon. Here's one more soundbite. Now that he realizes that he might be in trouble with the Department of Justice for appearing to trespass, meaning stay longer than invited and refuse to leave once explicitly told to, among others. I mean, he could potentially be in danger under the SAFE Act, the thing that disallows physical obstruction of parishioners or others at a place of worship. He comes out with the following defense this morning, SOT 7.
I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protests at the church before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
I mean, he's on camera saying, we don't know what's happening. We kind of do, but we don't know how it's going to play out, mentioning the church repeatedly before they even arrived. So I get the feeling, Matt, that Don Lemon might not be telling us the perfect truth there.
Yeah, well, it's so unlike Don Lemon to not tell the truth. I mean, it doesn't matter anyway. Yes, we have him. I mean, he has himself, so he incriminated himself by recording all this, live streaming it. And we saw him out in the parking lot outside of the church before they went in. And so we know that he knew exactly what was happening. But even if he didn't, let's just say that he saw this band of leftists walking down the street and just decided to join them randomly, which no thinking person believes. Doesn't matter. Once you see them going into the church to disrupt church services and commit a federal crime, actually commit probably a whole host of crimes, federal and state crimes. But once you see them doing that, that's where, if you don't want to also commit the crime, you would just, take a left turn and go do something else with your time. He decided to follow them in and participate in that. And he justified it the entire time and made it very clear that, this was not just like objective reporting. He wasn't critical of them. He wasn't even objective about it. He was very much in support of it. So this really, and now he's trying to backtrack because he's worried, and I hope he has something to worry about. I mean, this comes down to the Trump administration, who, it's one thing to do the investigations and all of that kind of stuff, and I think they're saying the right things in the wake of this, and mentioning the fact this is probably a violation of the FACE Act and everything else. But now is the next part where you send a SWAT team in to Don Lemon's house and you drag him out before dawn, and you perp walk him in front of cameras, and then you throw him in prison. Because guess what? That's exactly what the Biden administration did to peaceful pro-lifers. And now we do the exact same. It's time for these people to get a real dose of their own medicine for a change.
Yes, FACE Act. Thank you. I said safe. That's not right. FACE. Here's more of Don Lemon inside the church, making clear, as you point out, whose side he's on. And again, trying to defend what these protesters were doing. And obviously, because he was a part of it. Here's SOT 9.
I'm sure they probably call the local authorities right now, and they'll show up in a bit. But so far, no one has been hurt. People are just really angry and upset. And members of the church are trying to get them to calm down. But this is the beginning of what's going to happen here. When you violate people's due process, when you pull people off the street, you start dragging them and hurting them and not abiding by the Constitution, when you start doing all of that, people get upset and angry. And if you remember what the civil rights movement was about, the civil rights movement was about these very kinds of protests. And for some reason, in our modern era, people think that in order to have protests, you got to be, cordoned off to a certain area and, what time you can protest. There's nothing in the Constitution that tells you what time you can protest. You can protest at any time. That's the whole point of it, is to disrupt, it's to make uncomfortable. And that's what they're doing.
Okay. Look, I'm sorry, but he's so dumb. I have to say it out loud. No, there's nothing in the Constitution specifically spelling out what the restrictions can be on first speech. They are limited in this country, but they absolutely can have limitations. By the way, Dom, they're issued by statute that elaborates on the fundamental principles of the Constitution, on time, place, and manner. Time, place, and manner can be restricted, which is why the Westboro Baptist Church crazies can protest the funerals of our dead soldiers, but time, place, and manner can be regulated so that they cannot get right in the face of a grieving set of parents that just buried their boy. Okay? That's because the Supreme Court understands content restrictions get extreme scrutiny, but time, place, and manner regulations around speech, like you can't go into somebody's place of worship, are almost always upheld. But I'm sorry, Matt, he's too stupid or partisan to care.
Yeah, that's always the thing with Don Lemon, is he's legitimately a very dumb person, and so you always wonder, is he? That's always the kind of, like, is he lying right now? Does he know that what he's saying is as stupid as it is? I'm not really sure. It doesn't really matter anyway. And anytime you listen to this guy, or really any of these leftist protesters, they can kind of overwhelm you with bullshit. And so you don't even know where to begin in responding to it. It creates a challenge in and of itself, because everything they say is so wrong that you kind of get, it's like, where do I even start? Because for one thing, he says, well, this is, to justify the, quote, protest in the church, he says, well, this is what happens when you are kidnapping people, you're dragging out American citizens out of their homes. Well, two things with that. Number one, ICE is not doing that. Number two, you're in a church. These are not ICE agents. So even if they were doing that, why are you taking it out on these just random people who are trying to, including children, as he admitted himself, who are trying to worship? So it doesn't make any sense. But I will say that if Don Lemon, so what Don Lemon is claiming that he believes that protests are, number one, about being disruptive, about making people uncomfortable, and that if you want to protest, according to him, the Constitution says you can protest anytime, any place, and there's no restrictions on it whatsoever. That's what Don Lemon believes. And that's apparently what he, that's what he supports. So I get, and I'm not, I just want to make clear, I'm not encouraging this at all. I'm not saying that anyone should do it, but I could only assume that if a mob of people showed up at Don Lemon's house and protested in his living room, I can only assume that Don Lemon would say, wow, well, they're making me uncomfortable. They're being disruptive. And hey, I mean, the Constitution says you can protest anywhere, any place, anytime. So I assume Don Lemon would say that and welcome it. I mean, I can only assume that. So, or you know, maybe in that case, that's the one place where
Matt,
he would,
of course, the irony is that Don Lemon has sued multiple people. He's like one of these guys who loves to sue people and get paid, before he realized that he could get the ultimate settlement with CNN because they wanted to bounce a black gay man, as he continuously repeated right after the rumors hit that he was going to get fired. In any event, now he's got some money, right? He's suing Elon because Elon didn't want to continue paying for his show on X because he attacked Elon as soon as he got there and showed that he wasn't a real journalist. In any event, now he's got some money. So Don Lemon, I guarantee you, he lives in New York with his so-called husband, who I'm sure they live in some high-rise building with tons of security and doormen and tons of layers between them and the outside world. So no one's breaking into any place Don Lemon goes and harassing him. He's got lots of walls between him and any security threat, unlike this little boy that we're going to put on the screen, who's just sitting there trying to worship. And because of Don Lemon and his friends, got traumatized to the point where you can see the anguish on his face. He's getting hugged by a family member. There's another woman next to him with her hand on his back. You can tell he's upset. This is 4 months after the Minneapolis Catholic or Christian school was shot up, where little kids may still have some trauma, Matt, with a bunch of strangers walking into what's supposed to be a safe place for them and screaming in their faces.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that makes me so angry that I can't say. I can't say everything that comes immediately to my head when I see what these people are doing, and especially, I mean, you touched on it with, and this is a key point, with people like Don Lemon. It's like the leftists that go out there and they love to say, we got to make people uncomfortable, make them uncomfortable. Well, to a man, these are always the most comfortable people who live lives of absolute luxury. And so it's very easy for them to say, but like, what does it actually mean? I mean, it's one thing to say, well, we're going to make people uncomfortable. Well, what do you mean by that, Don? Uncomfortable in what way? Why should those people be uncomfortable with people like you storming into the church? Is it because they're going to be worried now that something violent's going to happen? Are they uncomfortable because they're worried that their safety is in jeopardy? Yes, that is the type of discomfort that Don Lemon and his fellow leftist domestic terrorist agitators are trying to create. They're trying to make these people not feel uncomfortable because they feel threatened. And that's always the unspoken thing when the leftists start swarming random white people, in Minneapolis who they claim are ICE agents just because they're white. We're making them uncomfortable. Yeah, you are making them uncomfortable because you are making them think that you're going to do something violent against them. There's an implicit and sometimes explicit threat attached to that.
Yes, and he said another word. He said that these protests are all about is causing trauma. Trauma. He wants that kid traumatized. He's looking forward to it. He thinks that's as American as apple pie. And your reference to what they're doing to random white people walking the streets of Minneapolis is spot on. We have a couple of those videos queued up. This is complete BLM 2020 type behavior. I mean, it is like straight out of the same playbook. And listening to the voice, I do wonder whether it's this guy, Megyn Kelly, who was helping lead the storming of that Baptist service. But here is a man screaming at some random white man walking down the street because apparently man number one thinks the guy's ICE, SOT 17.
Where you going? Huh? Are you ICE? No. Do you like ICE? Say f*** ICE! Say it! Say it, bitch! You're a bitch! Your mom's a bitch! Say it! F*** you! F*** you, Nazi! F*** you, Nazi! F*** you, Nazi!
Oh my God. Like, I don't know how that guy didn't punch him in the face. I give him so much credit, Matt, right? Like, in restraining himself. If somebody were to do that to you, like, I don't know, you're calmer than I am. I can be more of a hothead. I don't know how you contain yourself.
Yeah, well, that's the one of the many sinister parts of this is that that's one of the reasons they're doing it. Obviously, they're trying to provoke a violent reaction, which in some of these cases, I mean, we've seen a lot of these videos. We see them pulling over cars and like detaining people, which of course they have no legal authority what to do whatsoever. That's kidnapping. Harassing someone on the street like that. I mean, in many of these cases, someone would be perfectly, certainly morally, but I think in some cases legally justified in believing that their physical safety is being threatened, and then they respond however they respond to that. But that's what the left is hoping for. They're hoping for a response like that so they can flip it around and say, look at these right-wing terrorists. I also think that it's the one funny thing, if there is anything funny that comes out of this, is just it's the assumption by these leftist agitators that if they see a white adult male who does not appear to be mentally ill, they immediately assume that he must be on the other side. They immediately assume that he must be their enemy. And they're probably right, actually, most of the time.
Yeah. In their defense. Oh, wait, do we have that video, you guys, that I just sent you of the trans person singing? Okay, look at this, because this is what their side looks like. Watch.
I had a run-in with ICE last year in March. They called me
audience.
sir,
It is a
and they
bald
made it quite
woman.
clear. They
Multiple
threatened
piercings,
to check my body,
multiple tats,
to see
obviously overweight.
if I was trans. Their exact words.
Now they
Before I knew they'd surrounded
I don't
my
think this is her
car. Two on each side, one in front, like a star. It was right then in that moment I knew they had other plans. So I started screaming, I am recording, and I have been the whole time. They called me a fucking bitch, just like they called her a fucking bitch. They never were a man, and they'll never be, with their boot on the neck of the land of the free.
I mean, I'm sorry to tell you, sister, you're never going to be a man either, if that's what you're going for. But Matt happily identifies with the other team, and I think both of us can say, right on, you go with them, sister. Enjoy.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, Megyn, I'm always happy to come on your show, but if you're gonna make me listen to stuff like that, I don't know that I can.
Well, it's either that or Don Lemon clips, Matt.
Yeah, well, no, I got it. I do like that's like that's the funny thing about these left-wing theater kids. It's like it's what she's doing there. First of all, she basically has a blog post and she's just singing it. I mean, she made no attempt to actually turn it into song lyrics, but it sounds like it's like a Disney. I mean, it's like this is like Little Mermaid from hell. I mean, it's like some full-on Disney bullshit that she's doing, and I find that very funny. But here's the thing: you look at that, and then you see the other video of the guy screaming at the white guy. You see Don Lemon. It's like, if you look at those videos and you side with the singing trans person and the guy screaming, like if that's your immediate instinct is to take their side, then we don't even live on the same planet. I mean, I don't want to share a country with you. I don't respect you. I don't like you. And because that, I just can't even begin to understand it.
The gaslighting that's going on, that it's like the people causing the violence are the ICE agents, the ones who are arresting the child predators and the murderers, instead of these crazy leftists who are trying to interfere with everything they do, is really next level. Here is the mayor, Jacob Frey, on Wednesday. It was Wednesday. Listen to this. Like, I agreed with virtually every word if it were somebody on our side talking about them. Listen to this. Stop 14.
There's no doubt in my mind that you love your town. Imagine if that city or that town was suddenly invaded by thousands of federal agents that do not share the values that you hold dear. Imagine if your daily routines were disrupted. The local cafe that you eat at was shut down because they're scared that their own family might get torn apart. Imagine if schools shut down and suddenly parents got to figure out what to do for daycare. This is not creating safety.
Right, Matt, imagine if your town were invaded by thousands who did not share your values, and it was affecting your local community, your cafes, your restaurants, even the safety and conduct within your children's school. Can you imagine? Like, Wouldn't that call for some extraordinary action? Whatever could it be?
Yeah, it's right. It's impossible to imagine exactly what, of course, they're doing, and that's why I think it's important. There is, even though for normal people we see these people and we see how they're behaving, and it's very easy for us to know whose side to take in all this. And you would think that this is very repulsive to every average American, and it is. But there is a strategy behind it, because what they're trying to get everyone to believe, especially just kind of the casual observer who's not paying really close attention to the news, is that they want you to at least believe that, okay, yeah, maybe you're not on the protester side completely, but obviously ICE is doing something. Like, there's something happening with ICE, and ICE obviously is doing something really dramatic or really offensive, and that's what's provoking this reaction. But that's why it's really important to always remind people that, no, ICE, they're not doing any, like, they're just enforcing the law. And not only that, but they're almost exclusively targeting illegal aliens who have also committed other serious crimes like sex abuse and drugs and gang activity, that sort of thing. They, for the most part, they're not even going after just like your average illegal alien who didn't commit another crime aside from also being an illegal alien, which, by the way, I think they should. I think because if you in this country illegally, that's a crime in and of itself. But they're not even doing that. And yet this is the reaction.
So a couple more examples of the harassment, because they're legion, but here's one in SOT 19 as a bunch of folks were going to church. I'm assuming it's the same church, though I don't know. Watch.
Think you're gonna bring your kids here and we're gonna spare you while you fucking support the bombing of children in Gaza? You fucking these fucking Nazi little bitches. Goddamn, be smarter than your parents. Your parents are fucking Nazis. You're such a Nazi little bitch. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why do you think you can just destroy our nation? Why do you think you can bring back white supremacy? Why do you think you're better than everybody else? What the fuck is wrong with you, asshole? You will be judged not by a god, but by a court of law, you fucking Nazi fuck. You little bitch ass. What's your fucking excuse? I'm not near him.
You don't have to be that close.
Look at this little bitch putting his hands on me. Little punk ass bitch. All right, what's your fucking excuse? Why do you fucking go to a church that preaches? No, we know. What about the nationalism? What about the Christian nationalism? What is it about?
Is that all you got to say?
No, what is it about?
That's all you got to
What
say.
is it about, asshole?
I don't need to
See, you won't defend yourself because you're a punk ass little bitch fucking Nazi. Fuck you, you fucking Nazi fucking piece of shit. Shame on you. You think you're fucking superior than people? You ain't shit, bitch. You ain't fucking shit. You ain't nothing but a fucking cowardly fucking traitor. Look at these spineless little bitches.
This poor guy is just, I don't know, he looks like late 60s, early 70s, just trying to mind his own business, going to church. This is actually Washington, D.C. I thought it sounded like that same Kelly guy, but it was this past weekend, so I don't think it was. This is in Washington, D.C. It's happening now in city after city where you're allowed to do that, Matt. And yeah, they're just counting on the side of reason, being restrained, not engaging, being classy, not responding, because they know in city after city they are going to be able to get away with this. And the narrative is going to be that they're the side of the good guys and the ICE agents and others trying to maintain order are the evil ones.
Right, which is why it's so, I mean, just to go back to the point we've been making this whole time, it's so important that the law is enforced and that you throw the book at these people, because if you don't, I mean, we saw the same thing in 2020. We all saw this trajectory play out in 2020. Where it just it steamrolls, you know, it's like it's an avalanche, and once it really gets going, then it's almost impossible to stop, and you got to get in before that, because here's the thing: these people, these leftist agitators, I won't even call them protesters, they don't really care, you know, right? They're terrorists. Every protest for them is about everything. That's why he throws in Gaza, he throws in white supremacy. It's like everything's about everything all the time. Because they don't actually care about any of that stuff. These are destructive people. They're degenerates, and really, they hate everyone. They're full of anger. They're mad about the fact that they're total failures and they're losers and they're unhappy, and they're just looking for an excuse to take that out on someone. And this kind of environment gives them that excuse. And once they get kind of the taste of blood, they go crazy with it. And so you've got to come in and you've got to put a stop to it and throw the book at them before it really gets out of control.
We're seeing some of that just this weekend. A guy named Jake Lang, he got in trouble on January 6th. He's apparently running for office down in Florida. He was attacked by an angry mob down out in Minneapolis. This is, take a look at SOT 21, where he gets hit by the so-called peaceful protesters. It's a full mob around. Listening audience. Full mob. They're beating him. They're beating him with a flagpole. I thought you weren't allowed to do that. I was reliably told on J6 you can't do that.
Hey, Jake, why'd you kiss the wall?
Palestinian flag in the background.
Where are the police?
Here he is in SOT 23 trying to flee in a red sedan. Protesters don't allow it. Watch. Kicking him in his car. These are all crimes. Now they open the other door. Kicking him from the other side. Of course, in the Canada Goose jacket, which is about a fortune. So I just wanted to show you that, Matt. I know you've seen lots of videos like that because they're harassing many. They're harassing ICE. They're vandalizing vehicles. They beat an ICE officer with a broom and a shovel. Now you see this guy getting hit. We've been watching what's been happening to poor Nick Sorter and Kim Higbee down there, getting attacked repeatedly. And then Ellen DeGeneres felt the need to weigh in. And I know you, like I, have been asking yourself, what would Ellen think of all this? She's abandoned the United States to go live in the UK. But it's still really important to all of us what she thinks. And so I have an answer for you today, and here it is.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say I am so sorry for what is happening in Minneapolis and our country, really. But specifically Minneapolis right now. Thoughts and my prayers are going out to everyone. And I'm proud of everyone who's protesting peacefully. And I am sorry for anyone who has been hurt just for protesting, for doing what you should be doing.
There's your answer, Matt Walsh. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. This whole time I've been like everyone, I've been very lost these past few weeks. I don't know exactly what to think. I think I know what I think, but then I'm thinking, well, what does Ellen DeGeneres have to say? And then I turn on daytime TV and she's not there anymore because she got fired. And then but there it is. So, of course, and also keep in mind, as always, in particular in Minneapolis, what this is all about for them, where it all started, we can't say it enough, is that this is all about specifically protecting in Minneapolis Somali immigrants who are stealing from the people of Minneapolis to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's who they are all swarming in to protect. And that's who Ellen DeGeneres is now bravely speaking up in defense of.
Exactly. And let's not forget why Ellen lost her daytime show. It's because she was a bully. She bullied people who were less powerful than she was. She had a rule. I'm very reliably informed. Somebody I knew very well had a sister who worked for her. You were not allowed to look her in the eye as one of her producers when you walked past her in the hallway. And so it's no surprise that Ellen DeGeneres is totally fine with what these so-called protesters, terrorists, are doing in the streets of Minneapolis. It's no surprise whatsoever. And when she says, I'm very sorry for any protester who's gotten hurt, she, of course, is talking about Renee Good. And I'm sure just like most leftists, she's been fed the same lies we've heard from CNN now from the beginning. And she's chosen to believe them because she's ignorant and it's willful. It's not blind ignorance. It's willful ignorance. It suits her ideological purposes. Shame on her. Enjoy England. I'm sorry that our friends across the pond are stuck with Ellen, but let's face it, they gave us Harry and Megyn, so they deserve it. All right, let's take a quick break because I want to come back. There's a lot more to discuss, and I really do want to get into this series that you're now offering because half the lies that what we're hearing on the streets of Minneapolis are told every day to our children in K through 12 education. And like most of us, Matt's had enough of that. We will get back in just a minute and talk about his new series at the Daily Wire, Real History with Matt Walsh. If you're stressed out about getting out of debt, it's go time. This is one of those moments where timing matters. And let me tell you about Done with Debt. 2025 was a record year for them. People who collectively had more than $102 million in debt turned to these guys for help. Now, according to the Federal Reserve's latest survey, some banks have tightened their lending standards. Right now may be the best time to negotiate settlements with them. Done with Debt tracks credit card and loan company behavior, and they're experienced at knowing who's negotiating and when and what it takes to get you the biggest reduction possible. Whether you are carrying $10,000 or $500,000 in debt, this may be the best chance you'll get all year. So consider scheduling a free consultation. It only takes a few minutes. Imagine waking up without that weight on your shoulders and doing it without taking out another loan or filing for bankruptcy. Done with Debt helps you through the debt relief process so you keep more of your paycheck every month. Go to donewithdebt.com now. That's donewithdebt.com. A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to somebody from Birch Gold Group? You know you've been thinking about it. They use an educated approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower right now and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until January 30th, if you are a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate of up to $10,000 when you buy by January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898 and claim your eligibility today. Again, text MK to 989898 now. Matt Walsh is back with me, and he has a great new series, Real History with Matt Walsh at the Daily Wire. Because if you're sitting asking yourself how these people got so radicalized to the point where they would get in the face of churchgoers, of older gentlemen walking down the street, never mind of ransacking an ICE agent's truck and stealing his weapon, it starts in American schools. I mean, we all know that. In Matt's new series, he breaks down the lies that American children are being taught about our country and its history, including the topic of slavery. Here's a tease from his first episode.
I thought I knew the story of slavery, who the villains were, who the victims were. But I started digging into the original documents, the places never mentioned in school. I've been obsessed with history since I was a kid. I read the textbooks, nodded along in class, and I realized almost everything I'd been told was a lie. Not just exaggerated, not just incomplete, flat out, deliberately inverted. Why didn't they mention that of the 12.5 million slaves shipped across the Atlantic, only 3% came to the U.S.? Why do they always avoid the inconvenient fact that Africans sold the slaves to Europeans? What were those African kingdoms like? They built their palaces from human skulls and floated canoes in rivers of blood from their slaves. In what grade will we learn about the millions of white Europeans dragged off in chains by North African pirates while the world looked away? When's the lecture on black slaveholders in the South? Some facts don't make it into the textbooks. We're going to set the record straight. It's time for the truth. The history they don't teach in public schools. It's Real History with Matt Walsh. Available on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday.
Good questions, Matt. Why don't they teach that? What is the agenda?
Well, look, the agenda, not just in our schools, but for media, Hollywood, all the institutions in our country, is to make Americans hate themselves. And that begins in school with kids, to give us a version of our history that makes us ashamed, feel guilty, feel like we have no reason to have any pride in our country, in particular in its history. To cast America as, and in particular white Americans, as the great villains of history. That's what all this is about. And of course, that's what the left wants to do. The leftism is an ideology of destruction. It's inherently destructive. We call them progressive, which they are, but it's progressive in the way that cancer is progressive. It progresses in the way that we would say that of someone with a cancer diagnosis. It progresses in that it eats and destroys. And so that's been the case. We know that. Anyone who's been paying attention knows that. But then when you might even know that intellectually, but until you actually dive in and you start looking at some of these historical topics, especially the ones that we hear a lot about, generally, but we don't get very many details. When you start really getting into it, you realize that wow, I mean, they really lied about everything. The truth here is totally different. It's not just like, here's some more context. This is an entirely different story than the one that I was told. And so this is a series where each episode will look at a different topic in history. And we start with slavery. That's a really big one. And that's kind of where it begins. I think it's an appropriate place to begin because this is, we're told, right, the original sin of America's kind of original sin.
Nicole Hannah-Jones would tell us this is the whole reason America was formed.
Right, exactly. And if you go, it touches everything. You look at to your point, I mean, you look at the ICE agitators in the street. It doesn't take that long. It's only a few degrees of separation to go from there, to get from there to their narrative about slavery. I mean, this is what they think gives them the moral right, the moral justification to just do whatever they want, to go protest in the churches if they want to, because America was built on slavery and it has no right to exist. And every white American carries somehow that legacy, that guilt in their blood for slavery. And so you can treat them however you want. And then when you look into it, you realize that, well, that's totally absurd, starting with the fact that, and this is how we begin the series, or we begin this episode, is, let's look at this on a global scale. Before we get to the really particular subject of slavery in America, what about the global, what did slavery look like on a global scale? And it turns out that, of course, slavery was a global institution across the entire world for many thousands of years. It's actually kind of fascinating that even these civilizations that never came in contact with each other and disagreed about most things, came to the very different conclusions about most things, still came to the same conclusion, basically, that it's okay to own people. And that's whether you're in Asia or Europe, or you go to the New World, you go to the Americas. Again, these are civilizations that were thousands of miles apart, separated by thousands of years, and yet they all had slavery. If the guilt of slavery could be passed down in the blood to modern people, then we all carry it, without exception.
It was everywhere, and the slave trade that resulted in some number of slaves coming to the United States of America funneled slaves all over the Americas in a way that the detractors of the United States seem to conveniently forget. Here's another clip from episode 1. It's SOP 51.
Historians and political pundits spend a lot of time talking about the transatlantic slave trade, the 350-year period in which an estimated 12.5 million slaves were brought to the Americas. But what we don't learn in school is where those slaves actually went. Just under half of them, an estimated 5.4 million, went only to Brazil, and many more went to the Caribbean. 1.2 million went to Jamaica,
Brazil.
More than 900,000 to St. Dominique, and 889,000 to Cuba. The grand total of slaves brought to the future United States was about half the number brought only to Cuba, 472,372, or 3% of the total. The ones who came to the 13 colonies were the lucky ones. In the context of global slavery, getting put on a ship to New Orleans was really a best-case scenario.
I mean, that's incredible. And it dovetails perfectly with a point you guys make in the series, which is as follows. I'm quoting here. In the 1860 census, at the very height of slavery, there were 393,975 slave owners in the U.S. out of a total population of over 31 million. That translates to about 1.2% of the population. The vast majority of American whites never owned any slaves, which is not at all the narrative we are fed in 3rd and 4th grade and every grade thereafter, all the way to our 50s.
Yeah, and not only did, of course, the vast majority of Americans never owned slaves, but also America only had slavery as an institution for 90 years of its existence as a country. For 90 years of the existence of the United States of America, about 90 years, slavery existed. And you look at other countries across the world that had slavery as a legal institution for thousands of years. I mean, slavery was a legal institution in some places in Africa until the mid 20th century. I think it was finally abolished in like 1980 in the last African country. So, and the point of all this, obviously, because the response from the left will be and always is when I talk about this, that two wrongs don't make a right. That doesn't mean that it's okay that America had slavery. Obviously, that's not the point. The point isn't that it was okay for Americans to have slaves. The point is that it's historically incoherent to pretend that America has some kind of special guilt for slavery, because when it comes down to it, guilt is shared by every country, but America's relationship with slavery was, if judged against other countries at the time and other regions of the world, was much better and lasted for a much shorter period of time.
So this is not, of course, the only thing they mislead our children on. No matter what school we're sending them to, there's always a little bit of ideology that creeps in and infects the lesson plans, and history is like ripe for the exploitation. And I mean, like virtually all of the history teachers do it. This actually, I don't know that this is a history class where this came out of, but there was just in the news, hold on a second, where was it? My team, it's Iowa. It's in Iowa, of all places, where there was an audio tape that broke, Matt, from a kid. A kid, obviously, who's probably not supposed to have his or her phone in the classroom, sneaked it out and sneaked it on to record this ideological teacher in Iowa, on the subject of Renee Good, this ICE agitator who wound up on the wrong side of an agent's gun after she tried to run him over. Here it is, SOP 47.
But what you need to understand is that she was told to leave the area. And so she was turning her vehicle away. She waved to other vehicles and they were leaving. And she was turning away. And the officer stepped in front of her vehicle, raised his gun, and fired a shot at point blank range into her vehicle. And then as she drove away, he turned and fired 2 more shots at point blank range and shot her in the head. And that could have been you. And keep in mind, she had broken no law.
Oh, no?
She was simply following orders to leave a scene. Anybody here, the Manson Police Department can shoot you. Are you okay with that?
Okay, now you and I both know the number of factual errors that are in that little dissertation are too many to count right now. But the point is the crazy ass indoctrination. It's one thing to know it's happening, and it's quite another to hear the anger, the guilt she tries to slap on them, the terror. Let me just give you one point. In the law, I learned this point as a young law student who was on the moot court team. And I had done this in a moot court tryout. And I learned first day of law school as I tried out for moot court, you are not allowed to make the jury fear for its safety in your closing argument as a prosecutor. You can't say this guy's a rapist or a murderer, and if you don't find him guilty, he's going to come out and rape or murder you or someone you love. That's not okay, because you really do need to be fair to the defendant and need to make sure the jury is in a fair position to make a good decision. That's the last thing she wants of her students, that they remain in a fair and objective position to make a good decision. She just wants them swallowing her propaganda, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it goes without saying, it's so absurd when they say, oh, it could have happened to anyone. It could have happened to you. Well, it's like, no, it's 100% could not ever happen to me, because I'm not going to block traffic intentionally with my car for 3 minutes. And then when the cop tells me to leave, try to run him over. Just like when they said, oh, it could have happened to you with George Floyd. No, well, I'm not going to take fentanyl and then try to pass a counterfeit bill and then resist arrest when the cop comes. Like, I'm just not going to do that. So it's 100% not ever going to happen to me. That's not going to. But of course, we know that as adults, we have that capacity. We have the context. We know what's going on and everything. But what makes it so diabolical, obviously, in this case, is that you are doing this to children who, many of whom, I mean, think about the unfair position that these families are in, because if you're a parent, with some of these stories, you might not have sat your kids down and told them about all this, depending on how old they are, because you might feel like, well, it's not quite appropriate to talk to my kids about this at their age. So you have not equipped your kids with the true version of this story, perhaps, little did you know that you're sending them to school, and then in English class or whatever class that was, the first version of the story they get is from this totally deranged teacher. And those kids are not, what are they supposed to do? Even if they disagree, are they going to, if they stand up and say anything, they can get punished. They know that. And it's just, well, this is why I've been saying in my whole career, it's like, I'm not going to send my kids to public school because you're sending them into these indoctrination camps. And we know that this is how it goes.
Mm-hmm. I'll say the only advantage of sending them into schools that are a little woke, not actually woke, because that's just abuse, but a little woke is like, I think, because our daughter goes to a school that's a little woke and our sons go to an all-boys school that's not woke, is she's learning it. Like, she's starting to hear it, and she'll bring it home and say, this happened. And so it does give us as parents the opportunity to like inoculate her, before she moves on to college or whatever she decides her future plans are. And that is one benefit, but it would be better still if they didn't have it. So you're going to take this on. I mean, they've been doing this to our kids. I remember having a lunch with, I'll spare her the name, but she's a very famous news person. And she was talking all about how at her leftist New York City private school, they loved Howard Zinn. That's all they used to teach the kids history. And that guy hates America. So this series, as I see it, is sort of the antidote to Howard Zinn. It's the opposite of what Howard Zinn is teaching our kids. What's the next subject? You're going to do slavery. Where else are we going with this?
Well, we've got, there's kind of the possibilities are endless. I will say that the very next one that we're doing that I'm excited for is we're going to talk about the Indians. We're going to talk about the Indian Wars in America. And we're going to kind of take on this idea that's taken as sort of sacrosanct, and even I think a lot of conservatives just sort of implicitly believe it, which is that America was built on stolen land and that we waged this one-sided war of persecution, a sort of a Holocaust against the Indians that lasted for 300 years. That's the story that we get. That's the story they teach in schools. And like I said, I think even a lot of conservatives just kind of they sort of take it for granted that, maybe I'm proud of America, but what we did to the Indians was pretty bad. You hear those sorts of things. Well, it turns out when you look into this that that is not true at all. And a lot of the stories, a lot of the really famous stories that we hear, Trail of Tears and that sort of thing, again, when you look into the actual facts, the facts are not as they're presented. But also, when you look into it, you find that, well, these Indian tribes were, many of them, these were warfaring tribes. They were warrior cultures. They were only on that land when Europeans arrived because they themselves had violently conquered. And we'll get into, well, what does it mean? What does it look like if you're on land that Indian tribe happens to want? What's that going to mean for you, whether you're an Indian tribe or white settlers on the frontier? Well, it's not anything good. Like it's extremely brutal. And this was just part of this was basically every Indian tribe. This is what they did. You go in, you kill, oftentimes just kill everyone, man, woman, child, doesn't matter. Maybe you take the children as slaves, you take the women as slaves. Certainly the men, any men would be killed, best case scenario, or more often they'd be captured, then tortured just sort of for fun and then killed. This happened all across the continent. It was very common. And then the European settlers arrived, and now they are kind of joining in this already, this war of conquest that had already been waging for hundreds of years. And now the European settlers are just sort of part of that. They're part of that conflict. And they fought the war also, and they ultimately won it. But once again, it's kind of like with the slavery thing, to cast them as the villains in this story really makes no sense. And you really see that when you understand the history of what actually happened. And we're going to get into all that.
All of this would really explain Elizabeth Warren's ruthlessness in a historical way. So I appreciate you for adding to the dialogue. We can understand her better. Here's my one of my producers, Debbie Murphy's been with me forever, and she's up in Canada because she married a Canadian. And here's just an example of the land acknowledgement she has to listen to wherever she goes around Ontario. The town is called Burlington. Burlington, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nation and the Métis. From the Anishinabeg, okay, I don't know, Ashkenazi to the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, our lands spanning from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment, are steeped in Indigenous history. The territory is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. What the hell is that, Matt Walsh? We have to keep saying this, not just in Canada, but in places like the Northeast of the United States, because the counter narrative to the one you just gave us is the dominant one. The peaceful Native Americans with the single tear, the white man with the smallpox blanket is what is dominant. And if people want to know the truth, how do they find it with real history with Matt Walsh?
Well, you go to Daily Wire, and it's available right now to subscribers on the first episode's available to subscribers on Daily Wire.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for that antidote to Howard Zinn and for your comments and thoughts on everything, Matt. Great to see you. Okay. And we are, speaking of common sense takes on things, we're back tomorrow with James Woods. I'm actually really looking forward to his take on these lunatic protesters, aren't you? I really want to hear what he has to say, and I'd love to get his take on what happened at this church service. Yours too. Email me, Megyn@megynkelly.com.